Welcome to Double Fries No Slaw. It is January 2nd, first episode of the new year. TJ Pittenger, Richie Barnes back with you guys again. Richie, Happy New Year. How are you? How was your New Year's? Lay it on us.
I'm doing okay, TJ. I had a big New Year's Eve weekend planned. I was ready to play golf. Really nice course in Celebration, Florida here. Friday morning, we're going to go downtown, visit some friends, catch the fireworks down there. And then Omicron decided to come visit the house. The wife had
the house
her
Barnes
job. Yeah, they had a big outbreak at her job. So she started having symptoms Monday or Tuesday. Then Wednesday night, I got a fever, started to feel it a little bit. Thursday morning, woke up not feeling great at all. So I'm like, all right, we're going to get tested. All of the test sites in Orange County here were 7-8 hour waits. So we just went to a private lab, paid $150 each just to get the COVID test. Hers came back positive. Mine was negative, actually. But I knew I had it, right? So I called up my director of nursing at the hospital. Luckily, I have those contacts. I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. She's like, you're positive. It's just going to take another day or two. So I got a at-home test kit from the hospital. Luckily, there's some scumbags selling them for like $200 on Craigslist. Don't be that guy, people.
Are they sold out in like the local Walgreenses and stuff?
Yeah, it's Central Florida.
Wow.
It's
I just got one
right
like
now.
2 weeks ago.
And I did too before Thanksgiving, and now they're impossible to find. But yesterday I took the test and it am positive. So the good news, I feel pretty good still. The worst was about 36 hours of fever. Still a little congested, had some really bad body aches, but yeah, it was only about 48 hours of I wouldn't call them severe, but symptoms that really, had me down a little bit. But the good news, we actually got to do some home projects, hung a projector out in the patio. Pretty excited pretty excited. Got to watch the playoff games out there during that. So we didn't waste it just laying in bed. We stayed productive, but I'm locked in this house till at least Tuesday, probably Wednesday. So good news, no work. Bad news, I'm stuck here and I'm going to lose my mind if I can't leave this house eventually. How was your New Year's, TJ?
A little different than that. We talked about it, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe it's been a month. I don't even know how long it's been. Yeah, it was the beginning of December. So I had the flu, and I got the flu on Friday. Felt pretty bad Friday and Saturday. I watched the Army-Navy game from bed and just didn't do much of anything that weekend. And then I did the podcast with the flu that Sunday morning, and then like afterwards went back for like a 2-hour nap. And I'm like, you couldn't see it, but like I'm sweating everywhere and everything. So hopefully you're feeling a little bit better than that. But I just want to commend both of us for getting the flu and COVID and everything else and still just trucking right along with this podcast. So
yeah, the funniest thing is that my wife, she's Googling frantically, searching. I'm like, what are you looking up? She's like, I just want to make sure we can't give it to the dog. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Goodness gracious. I know where the dog ranks in your house just from several conversations and things we've talked about.
He's above me, that's for sure.
Our New Year's was good. We, pretty easy work week. I work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Pretty light week though. Like everyone was out, so wasn't a lot to do. And then Friday was New Year's Eve, wasn't it? Yeah. So Thursday we had Allie, who I do the Pete to Pit show with. We had her and her family over to just watch some football. I made some ribs, which those were really, really good. We went over to her house. We went back over to her house. She lives like 6 minutes from us. For New Year's Eve, we watched the playoff games. Eric, who, for those who don't know, he punted at UF. He did the sous vide. He did the sous vide like you do. Made some incredible fillets, really, really good on New Year's Eve. Watched the games, of course, and then yesterday just kind of like hung out and enjoyed the day off. I'm off tomorrow too, so I know that you're off for COVID for a few days, but I'm off tomorrow too, so it's like a great 4-day weekend with Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off. And then we'll get back after it on Tuesday. But nice to have that day off after the weekend. So yeah, pretty good. Today started Whole30 Day One. So for those that don't know, Whole30 is 30 days of basically everything, nothing processed. So no like breads or dairy or sugars or alcohol or anything like that. I am still going to do the Bourbon on a Budget podcast. So I do get four nights off this month. But I can't like keep drinking. Like while I'm on the show, it's like if we're reviewing something, like I can have like, a little bit. But That was from last night, but can't like keep drinking later and later and later. So anyway, Whole30 Day One, I'm suffering too. But something I will not be having this Whole30 is Guthrie's. I'll have to get it on February 1st when we're done with this junk. We do this every year. Karen and I just talked this morning. This is our 8th time doing Whole30. It's our 7th January in a row doing it. And I was talking with Richie beforehand. It's a nice cleanse after the holidays. It sucks for being like social. Like I think we're going up to Tallahassee the last weekend of January. We'll have like 3 days left, but we'll be on it while we're up there. It makes it hard to go out to eat. Not impossible, but you're basically just like, can I just get like some chicken and broccoli and
it reminds me
salad with oil and vinegar.
It reminds me of a couple of years ago when I joined you and Silk and Kevin Newberg at the Pro Bowl at the hospitality tent.
Yeah,
it was all you can eat, all you can drink. I was having a real good time, and y'all couldn't.
I was just looking at it.
At all.
Yeah, it was terrible. So, but yeah, so that's where we're at. That's what we're doing in this house. But for those of you not on Whole30, run by Guthrie's, Double Fries No Slaw, brought to you by Guthrie's in Tallahassee. Both their locations you can visit. 1818 West Tennessee Street and 2550 North Monroe. Is there something in that orange juice that you just took a sip of? Is that a mimosa or is that?
No, it's just.
Oh no, you're sick. I forgot. It's just straight orange juice. I was like, let's go with the mimosa.
No, I'm pretty sure I'm going to pour myself a beer mosa with a high life for the Bucks game. But
dude, that's the way to beat the Corona. Is just to drink it out of your system. Like that's definitely the way. All right, cool. So visit both their locations. I actually chatted with their guy again this last week. We are going to do a giveaway with them again coming soon. So stay tuned for that and check that out if you're in Tallahassee. Actually, if you're at any of the Guthries, like we'll make it. We'll hook you up one way or the other. I know most of you are going to be at the Tallahassee one. All right, let's jump into it. Florida State with this may not be super long, but Florida State has some news kind of going around with it. A lot of it focused on the portal, guys committing, guys we're targeting, guys we're looking at. So we'll kind of start with that. We'll start with some portal news, Richie. We'll get into some news about a couple of FSU commits and signees from this past signing period, and then kind of go around the horn. Florida State basketball returned after a pretty long layoff. Talk a little playoff action. And maybe go around the horn just a tad and then get out of here. So first up, portal news. Florida State's been pretty active in the transfer portal. We talked about this, and we've, kind of made it a pretty big deal. Florida State did not hit on all of their needs on signing day, really weren't even close. And we've been doing the FSU spaces a ton. Shout out to anybody that's in here, that is joining us daily for those spaces. I know that Harlan jumps in at times. Richie's there like every day. So shout out Richie. But at this point, Florida State needs guys that can come in, and Josh has said this. I don't mean to just steal his thunder, but Newberg has said this. Florida State needs guys that can come in and be instant impact guys, and there really just aren't a lot of instant impact guys that are out there in the transfer portal. That are out there in the recruiting ranks as far as high school goes. If you're taking a high school kid at this point, probably a project. And there's some high star kids still out there, but they're just not guys that Florida State's in on. And so looking for guys that can come in and make an immediate difference. And they found a couple over the last week. One, Greedy Vance, a Louisville defensive back, committed to FSU. Coach Woodson had recruited him at Auburn. Thoughts on Greedy Vance coming in?
Yeah, I think it's a good move. It's, building the depth. We have a lot of defensive backs, obviously, on the roster already, but, they've kind of been an underperforming unit based on their recruiting rankings the past few years. So I'm excited to bring someone in. He's from Florida. I think at Auburn, there was a numbers situation where he just kind of was the last guy out. So ended up at Louisville. I believe he has, 600 to 800 career snaps already. So you got a guy that's experienced, that knows the league. He's played in the ACC Atlantic, so I think that's a big bonus. Again, it's if he's not an instant impact guy, that means he pushed other guys to kind of stay ahead of him. So I think it's a good take. I don't know if they'll go for any more defensive backs, but it's certainly a good one. It's a guy that was a contributor on a team that beat you this year, that kind of was on the verge of blowing you out. So anyone you can take from a team that beats you, that contributed to that, I'm all for it, man.
Yeah, I think that this is a good pickup for Florida State. I don't know that he necessarily comes in and just is the the defensive back that likes to roll on fire or anything like that, or he's the number one DB. But in a position group where you did miss out on your biggest target of the offseason, and some, in a position group that, Josh talks about this often on the spaces, Florida State fans think that because a couple of young guys showed flashes toward the end of last year that our defensive back problems are all of a sudden just solved. Not necessarily the case. Need as much depth there as you can possibly get. I do expect him to come in and get quite a few reps, whether he starts or not. I think that's, a little tough to predict here on the first Sunday in January when we don't play until, is it late August? Do we play at the very end of August?
I think. Yeah, we got Duquesne on August 27th. Yep.
That's going to be great for Elena's birthday party is always, yeah, we'll see. My guitar, it's just always something to run into. Yeah. And I like going up for the opener. We'll see. Yeah, you're right. But anyway, somebody that will make an impact for Florida State in a very needed transfer, for sure. A little undersized, but excited to see kind of what he can do when he gets in, where they put him. See a slot guy, is he in the nickel? Where's it all end up shaking out? But I do expect him to make a difference, right? Like I do expect him to be somebody that helps Florida State a ton.
And you're not going to hit on everyone in the portal, but if you're taking a guy right now, it's still pretty early as far as the portal, because we expect, once all these bowl games finish up, and especially once spring practice, we're going to see a lot more players flood the portal. So for the coaches to take him this early, they must feel confident that he is going to contribute to the team.
Another transfer that Florida State landed on New Year's Eve. New Year's Day, I guess, yeah. right at midnight. There was a lot of smoke around this commitment. There was a lot of people that kind of thought that this would be somebody that Florida State would go after. Had a really good chance of landing. Were you awake? Did you stay up till midnight?
I did actually. Yeah, we stayed up, watched the ball drop. Yeah, those years
there was good games on too. There was a good game on like pretty close up until midnight, right? Like well, I guess that game ended at like 10, so maybe not.
Yeah,
I lied.
But I was proud of ourselves. We made it up, so
that's good. So I felt good about Deuce Spann the entire time until like he said, like, I'm committing at midnight. And then I was like,
yeah.
It's just like all the flashbacks from signing day, jump in your head and you're just like, oh no, please do not blow this one. Please sign this kid. And so ended up committing to Florida State. I actually sent a couple of texts and guys were like, no, I'm not worried at all. Like this is happening. And so he ends up committing to Florida State at midnight. I thought that was pretty cool. All of the, 247, everybody had their good puns ready for, midnight fireworks for the Noles and things like that. But that was a lot of fun. A third wide receiver target. I don't think Florida State they might be done, but, looking at one other potential wide receiver transfer as well. But that wide receiver room looks completely different. Deuce Spann out of Illinois, big play potential for sure, a lot of size and speed. And so thoughts on him coming in and Florida State really being heavy in that wide receiver room.
Yeah, and they had to be, right? They didn't sign a single wide receiver in the class, losing Mortimer at the last minute. They've done a good job. Johnny Wilson, Micah Pittman, now Deuce Spann. I like him. He's a good athletic kid, a Florida native. Really excited to see how they use him. I was reading the 247 commitment article, and he even mentioned that the staff, when they were making their pitch, said they're going to use him at quarterback in some packages. He was a dual threat quarterback coming out of high school and went to Illinois as a quarterback, switched to receiver. Yeah, man, he's a good athletic guy. And, you got 3 transfers that are, ready to come contribute right away. So I think that's going to be extremely helpful because, wide receiver outside of Tamari and Terry hasn't been great in several years. Even he was kind of a one-trick pony. So, again, just bring in competition, right? Maybe the guys on the roster before these transfers were ready to take that next step, but now they're going to have to take it. Spann's just a really intriguing prospect. He was looking at South Carolina, Houston, Utah, some other schools like that. And Florida State was able to get him. So I think it's a good addition and much needed because, again, Jordan Travis made some strides, but let's not pretend his receivers helped him out much at all this year. So definitely looking forward to see how they contribute and what it does for Jordan Travis as he continues his development as a quarterback.
All I'm wanting is for David Hale to not rank us 14 out of 14.
Yeah. And be right about it
in
too.
the ACC. Yeah, in wide receiver. Our wide receiver stepped up and made some big plays this year. A lot of that was schemed up, but Parchment made a big play against Miami. We made some big plays.
Yeah.
But I do think that this is going to open up a really, really healthy competition. I don't think anybody that's transferred in is just like an automatic one, like where you're saying like, oh, this guy is the guy and everybody else behind him. But you got a lot of guys that have a ton of potential, and you can kind of see if you just get more options and you kind of like raise the floor a little bit, and then everybody kind of starts competing a little bit more. I'm excited to see what that wide receiver room looks like. I think we've finally gotten the offensive line in a place where we feel somewhat comfortable with it. I mean, obviously with Gibbons and you think about, kid from Wisconsin.
Caden Lyles, yeah.
Caden Lyles that came in. Some other guys that have just played a few years now. I think that, our offensive line is in a much better spot than what we've been accustomed to and used to. But, if we can get the wide receiver room going too. Obviously, you've seen Jordan improve. The running back room has come along. There's been good development there. I know you're losing Corbin. But, if the wide receiver room can just put it together, it'd make it a lot easier on Travis and the rest of the offense for sure.
It's exciting though, right? Looking at all these new pieces coming in, we saw flashes of what the offense could be, but it was far from consistent. I'm interested. Can this offense become one that can have a 12-play, 75-yard drive that takes 7 minutes off the clock? Because, for us, it was either big play or nothing for the majority of the year, but a lot of new pieces. This spring is going to be really interesting to watch this offense.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I think that, like we've talked about this, you're not going to hit on every single guy that comes. And shout out Patrick here. Shout out to the employed getting paid to listen to the spaces. If you're not, most of you listening know this. Most of you, maybe some of the folks on Facebook or YouTube don't. Harlan actually asked a question. There's a whole bunch of people watching on Twitter as well. Unfortunately, StreamYard and Twitter don't communicate as well as they used to from a functionality standpoint. It had to do with Periscope going away. So we don't get the comments on Twitter. They don't show up on the app that we use. And so I can't post your comments. If you go watch on Facebook, which I know, most of you on Twitter hate that app, but if you go watch on Facebook or YouTube, you can comment. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, obviously we do those FSU spaces every day and during the week. And Josh always shouts out the people that get paid to listen to the spaces. So if you're getting paid right now to listen to Double Fries No Slaw, shout out you for getting paid on a Sunday and obviously not doing what your employer wants you to do. If you're not familiar with the spaces, again, we do them just about every weekday at noon. You can follow me on Twitter, TJ _Pittenger, and I post a link every day at noon. So pretty straightforward there. All right, we've got some other targets we want to talk about really quick. Shout out Mike. We enjoy doing the spaces. My wife hates that I do them. The first one I ever did, she's like, "You're not going to start doing these, are you?" And I was like, No, of course not. And then we started
every day.
So, yeah. I usually do them when the kids are napping, though, so at least she gets that reprieve. She gets away from the kids and away from me for an hour. So, a couple other transfers that we are looking at. You want to take this? You want to take this first one?
For transfers, looking at who we got? Yeah, Jared Verse. Yeah, Jared Verse, a name that's been floating around for a while. The Albany defensive end transfer set to decide soon. And we added several different writers to our website at doublefriesnoslaw.com. So shout out to Dane Draper, one of our writers. He actually caught up with Jared Verse earlier this year, or earlier last week, and to get an update. And, he kind of keeps it pretty close to the vest. But he will be deciding very soon, and it'll be interesting. A lot of schools want him right now. Florida State's heavily in the mix on this. I found it interesting. He did mention that, that name, image, and likeness is not going to play a role for him really at all. He said, I'm going to go somewhere produce, and the money's going to come afterwards. So I love that mentality of this kid, and we're just really waiting because, again, it doesn't seem like anybody has a real good inside scoop on what he's doing, but we do expect a decision soon. And obviously he's not going to replace the Jermaine Johnson, but it certainly helps that, the losing Johnson and Keir Thomas. You need to bring someone in, and Verse is the best defensive end option in the portal right now that a lot of schools are after. would be a huge pickup for Florida State if they can pull that off. But I'm not sure what you're hearing on that recruitment, TJ.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Florida State's very much in the mix. When he spoke with Dane, which again, it's Dane_Draper. Give him a follow if you're listening to this, if you're watching this. But when he spoke with Dane, he did say that he was down to 2, 3, 4 schools. Just wasn't really announcing a top 3 or 5 or anything out of respect for the other schools that had been recruiting him. He's not a super flashy kid. It's not super flashy, like making it about himself or anything. So I do like that about the kid. Also not super, focused about the money or anything like that, which again, if kids chase the bag, that's not, that's totally fine. But I just like that he just seems like I just want to play football. I just want to get better. I know that stuff will come. I'm not really worried about it. I like his mentality. I like his attitude. Hopefully that mentality and attitude ends up in Tallahassee. I mean, based on what he told Dane and based on what the guys at Noles 247 have reported and everything else, I do think that he ends up committing somewhere this week. That's kind of the timeline that he set forth to everyone he's spoken with. I think that Florida State has a great chance to land him. Josh has kind of talked about on the spaces that he thinks is between Tennessee and Florida State. Tennessee's a program certainly on the rise. I think Florida State is as well. Tennessee had a little bit better year than we did. I mean, they lost their bowl game, kind of in dramatic fashion and overtime and stuff. And Florida State obviously just slightly missed out on a bowl game, but 2 programs on the rise. I think that there are certain things that Tennessee can sell that we can't. I think there are certain things that Florida State can sell that they can't, especially Keir Thomas and Jermaine Johnson, who I know he spent some time with Jermaine when he was in town, speaking with him. So I don't know. I don't feel confident enough to say, I don't think anybody feels confident enough to say like, oh, I definitely think this is Florida State. There are no crystal ball predictions in for him on Noles 247, but I think that, we have as good of a chance as anybody. I also think the staff feels really, really good. What I've heard is the staff feels really, really good about how they've recruited him. Thinks that they've done everything that they possibly could have to bring him in. I will say they thought that about some other guys in the early signing period, so take that somewhat with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, if the staff says, "Hey, we've done all we can, we've laid it on the line," it's up to the kid at the end of the day. So. No, Jaron Wilford, I am not saying that he's definitely a Nole, but if he becomes one, then I was saying that. So
heard it here first, right?
Yeah. I'm probably going to. I'm not sharing that comment. I'm not saying it out loud either. Another one that we're targeting, Tatum Bethune, linebacker out of UCF. He led UCF in tackles this year. He also led the team in tackles when they played the Gators and upset them in the Gasparilla Bowl. So I really need this kid to commit to Florida State. I got a lot of trolls I can get off for this. Just please, Tatum Bethune, a linebacker from UCF that just recently entered the portal and has a bunch of ties to FSU. And there was some smoke around this kid a few days before he entered the portal. There was some rumors that he was going to enter the portal and that Florida State would be a big target. Reached out and got confirmation that if he was to enter the portal, that this would be somebody that Florida State would be going, looking at, trying to court, trying to go after. Biggest 2 ties, he committed to UCF when Randy Shannon was the defensive coordinator. Randy Shannon, obviously FSU's linebacker coach now, took over from Marv. And Sabbath Joseph coached him in high school, a defensive analyst now at Florida State. And so some pretty strong ties there. Not to say that, a kid is definitely going to commit just because he's got a couple of ties at school. I know that a lot of people think like, oh, well, he's got ties, he's definitely going there. But I do think Florida State's pretty active here. Obviously a major position of need and a really, really good player. Won some all-conference awards, led UCF in tackles. Again, UCF had a little bit of a down year this year. Their quarterback was injured for most of it, and so you kind of understand that. But led a pretty good defense in tackles and would certainly be a very welcome addition in that room for Florida State. I don't really have any inside info to say that he's definitely coming or anything like that, but I know there's a ton of smoke around it. I think that Florida State, there's some optimism from them as well. So we'll kind of see what happens, but no real inside info. Just know somebody that I know that would be a big, big addition for FSU.
Yeah, he's a day one starter for sure if he comes to Florida State.
Oh, yeah.
And he might be your best linebacker from day one as well, either him or probably Caitlyn Deloach. Like you said, Randy Shannon recruited him to UCF. You have that. I just think there's a lot going for you in Florida State's favor right here. And again, big position of need. You think wide receivers were probably the worst unit on the offensive side of the ball. I think linebackers as a whole were probably the worst unit on the defensive side of the ball. And, if you can bring in help, day one help to come in and start, absolutely sign me up. It's, 3.5 hours up the road. And like you said, his most recent game, he led the team in tackles in a win over UF. So that's just, the cherry on top. So definitely hope the staff, if they identify him as someone they definitely want, that they can bring him in because, again, instant help and a day one starter on that side of the ball.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Also, while you talk about linebackers, shout out Caitlyn Deloach. I know some linebackers made some big strides this year. Nobody bigger than him. We had Rob on the Spaces like a week or so ago. Shout out that kid because, a room that just was not up to the Florida State standard by any means at all, a room that has taken more heat than any other position group, well, outside of offensive line, the last 5 years. Caitlyn Deloach really, really stepped up and was that guy toward the end of the year. So shout out Caitlyn. Not the only guy. I mean, there's a lot of guys that made plays, but you just think about the safety against Boston College. He was in it, all the time against Florida. He was just a big, big piece of what Florida State did in their turnaround of the season. So I didn't even have that in the notes, but shout out Deloach. All right, a couple of things here. Some news from some FSU signees. Not on campus just yet, but they should be this week. You want to do this? Do you want to? Why don't you do these? I've been doing all the transfers. Unless you're out of breath, or I don't know if the Omaricon's killing you or not. I keep going. I just feel like I've talked too much.
I need to save my breath for a segment coming up here, but yeah, we have several signees that are participating at the Under Armour All-American game and practices. AJ Duffy, the quarterback signee from IMG out of California. Man, he's been really impressive. This is just an excerpt from a 247 article. It says Duffy's been the top quarterback in each practice this week and then won the accuracy challenge earlier today with a score of 44. For context, the next closest to him was Connor Wiegman with a score of 14. So yeah, he's clearly having a pretty good week out there. Really excited to see him play at 2:00 on ESPN today. And a couple other Florida State signees. We have Julian Armella and Jalen Early, two offensive linemen we just discussed about that room getting much better. They'll be participating in that game as well at 2:00 today on ESPN again. So maybe halftime of the Bucks game, I'll flip it over and catch a little Duffy and see what's going to be the future of Tallahassee.
Yeah, no, that's exciting for somebody that other people have said like, oh, he played at IMG, played with a bunch of all-stars, blah, 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 blah. Glad to see that he's really getting the recognition and just going out to these camps and absolutely lighting them up. So I'm excited for him for sure. Another one, we've got Julian Armella and Jalen Early. Oh, sorry, you already mentioned this. Did you just mention Armella and Early or no?
Yeah. So they've had solid weeks.
Games at 2.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to check that out. I don't know why Under Armour thinks it's a good idea to compete with the NFL for this game, but I'm sure some diehards will be watching the whole thing.
Josh was talking about that. Are they, are the All-Star games dying? And I don't know. I think bowl season might be, but
Yeah.
Going up against the NFL is not their best move. Do this on Monday afternoon. Everybody's off tomorrow. Everybody's off tomorrow because the holiday is on a weekend. Then you usually get like Monday or Friday off. So like you should have just anyway. I don't make these decisions. All right. I think it's time. For my favorite part of the show. We've got big prayers up that Richie can actually get through this. Hey, if you're not, if you've got a business, let me just put a little plug out there. If you've got a business or something, like this is the best part of our show. And hopefully Florida State will keep winning and we'll keep doing these. But if you sponsor this and you want to get your business's name out there, we'll do this win, loss, or draw. Like it doesn't matter. So anyway, slide in my DMs if you want to get in on this action, because this is everyone's favorite. We're going to start clipping these videos and throwing them up on YouTube because they're pretty good too. But I just got a DM. Let's see here. No, it just says Happy New Year's. I was excited about that for a minute. Without further ado, the best part of the show, Richie's basketball minute.
After 18 days of COVID-related cancellations and postponements, the Seminoles were back in action, taking the Leonard Hamilton Road Show to Raleigh, North Carolina. As the Tribe took on Tobacco Road, it was a tumultuous start as NC State stormed out to a 12-5 lead on a Darian Seaborn trifecta. The good guys would finally settle in thanks to some early buckets from the Philly phenom Naheem McLeod. Then, with the Tribe down 24-21, Caleb General Mills attacked the tin and lowered a tomahawk slam directly on top of the Pack's Terquavion Smith. With the first half winding down, NC State was looking to build on their lead in transition, but Anthony Polite had other ideas, rejecting Breon should-have passed at the rim, leading to a Cameron Haymock Fletcher lay-in at the other end as the Noles would take a 2-point lead to the half, up 43-41. Then, with the final 20 minutes underway, the Tribe would ride the crazy train a bit, with Malik Ozzy Osborne dropping 10 points in a 6-minute span, keeping the Noles in the game. It would take everything in the tank for the Tribe to hold off what turned out to be just a two-man Wolfpack, with Seaborn and Smith combining for 55 of NC State's 81 total points. Finally, with the Noles hanging on to a 2-point lead with 8.4 ticks on the clock and the Pack looking to tie or take the lead, it was the Kentucky transfer Cameron stealing the inbound pass, leaving NC State down and out. But not before some drama in Vegas, as Deron Seaborn launched one from half court at the buzzer, cutting the Noles' margin of victory from 5-2. An extremely bad beat for anyone who had the Garnet and Gold -3, but I digress. Noles win their first conference game of the season on the road, no less, as they turn their sights to a Tuesday night trip back to Tobacco Road to take on the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest.
It was about time that we got a win in basketball. Taking 18 days off, I guess we won the last one against whoever that terrible team was.
Lipscomb, yeah.
But it was about time to beat a good. I don't know if they're a good team. Suck it, Hunter. It felt good to get a respectable win, a conference win. Never easy to go on the road in the ACC and win in conference, no matter who you're playing. And for somewhat of a tough season that we've had to start, I mean that was a nice way to do it. So,
it was kind of the opposite of some of these games we lost when you think about Syracuse.
Came back,
where North Carolina State went up, I think it was 58-51, and they were really starting to pull away, and Florida State just hung around. I was not expecting a game where both teams scored in the 80s, especially coming off that long break. But definitely a big win. Like you said, any ACC road win, I don't care if it's Boston College, Wake Forest, whoever the worst team in the ACC is, it's a good win. Duke, Carolina with their 5 stars, they always lose on the road in the ACC at least once, right? Because that's usually that hard to do. Yeah, they usually to us.
Usually in the tuck.
But they'll lose to a bad team like a Wake Forest or Georgia Tech or something. But yeah, a great win to get things back started. Again, that we want to get to the tournament, and hopefully, this Omicron burns through all of college basketball, and we can have some, uninterrupted, at least, 5, 6, 7, 8 game stretch here. But definitely excited. Team played well, showed some resolve. Very happy with Coach Ham and the team after that one.
Yeah, no doubt. Good win for them. FSU's women's team was supposed to play today. Their game against Syracuse got canceled, and they are not playing that. So a little bit of a slow time for FSU athletics. Football's heavy with the transfer portal and recruiting and stuff like that, but not a lot going on elsewhere. Swimming and diving has a competition on Thursday, I believe, against Texas A&M. Women's basketball plays Clemson on Thursday. The men have Wake Forest Tuesday, Louisville Saturday at home. And so excited to kind of get some of these other sports rolling. I know that tennis starts really soon. I know that we had Jennifer Hyde on a ton, FSU's women's tennis coach. Men's tennis brought in the number one ranked recruiting class. And so excited for some of these other sports to start. And then before long, we'll have Meat back on here to talk a little baseball, and Lonnie to talk some softball, because that won't be too far from getting kicked off. Richie mentioned this, but I wanted to mention this as well. We added a couple of writers to the team. I didn't really know what title to give him, but we're going to call him a content specialist. We added Dane Draper, who is interning with the Osceola, as kind of a recruiting guy for us. Dane is a student in Tallahassee, will be at Florida State soon, but Dane does a fantastic job. And, his Jared Verse article, his interview that he did with Jared, had more views than anything else we've ever had on the website. I know that people just die for the recruiting news, but everything you and I have written, Richie, that would blew it out of the water. We also added Mike Ferguson, who has written for well over a decade. Mike was the owner of the Daily Knoll, and he brought over kind of daily updates for FSU athletics. He's going to be doing some anniversary type stuff. Wrote something yesterday on January 1st, how it was the 20th anniversary of Baldentine Bear Bryant. So just trying to add some more content. We do the podcast once a week. We enjoy that. We like interacting with you guys on social media, but we have always stayed pretty focused on all FSU sports. We know that football is really what kind of brings people to the table, but we really want to continue to cover and talk about all FSU athletics. And Mike does a fantastic job of that. Put an article out this morning called Seminole Sunday Sauce. And that's kind of a recap and a look ahead to the week that we've had previously and then what's upcoming. So check out those two guys, Mike Ferguson and Dane Draper, who we added. And then we added Sean Lawson, owns a digital marketing company. He's going to be helping us with some website stuff as well as some video for social media. So excited about adding him and bringing him on the team as well. But 3 new year, new us. We're really the same us, but with a few new additions. So shout out those guys. If you go to our Instagram, you can see those guys that we added. If you go to Twitter and scroll back in the media section, you can see them as well. But we tweet a lot, so you have to kind of scroll back for a minute. College football playoff. All right, Bama UGA. We'll have another show before that, so we can talk about that a little bit more next week. But thoughts on the let's do this. Thoughts on the 2 games that just happened. Bama, Cincinnati, and then Michigan, Georgia. I don't know if there's too much other bowl action you want to talk about, but anyway, we can talk about whatever you want. We can also let you go since you're sick. But thoughts on the playoff?
Yeah. Well, I'll get real quick. Shout out to Cincinnati, right? I know what the final score was, but they made that a game, and that Cincinnati defense, they were impressive to me. If that quarterback, and people said he was a first-round talent, if that's the case, he lost millions of dollars during that game, because I know it's Alabama and they're bringing pressure, but he just was terrible. And then the Georgia game, I turned it off at the half. At that point, we just started watching New Year's stuff because it was clear that Michigan had no shot at all in that one. At least with the Alabama game, Cincinnati made it interesting. Although once Alabama got to like 17 points, you kind of felt Cincinnati was out of it because they just couldn't move the ball on offense, or they couldn't put the ball in the end zone. But yeah, it's not the two greatest semifinals, but people can say what they want about the BCS, this system, whatever. We typically always get the 2 best teams in the country, and I think that's the case again this year. We have the 2 best teams in the country playing for a national title. I think it's going to be an outstanding game, and I'm excited for it.
Dude, I got a lot of Alabama fans upset with me for saying this, but I thought Georgia was a more impressive team on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And maybe Alabama kind of like held stuff back and knew that they could play pretty vanilla and beat Cincinnati. And that's not a shot at Cincinnati, but it just is the truth of the matter, right? Yeah. I thought Georgia was much better. I thought the wake-up call that they got, and that's not to say they beat Alabama, but I did see they were a slight favorite going into that game. Yeah. And they look great. And I know that Michigan is not Alabama. And but they looked like the team that we had seen all season. And their offense was, yeah, exactly. He was incredible. but just everything was good. Their
Yeah.
defensive line is just ferocious. They can run the ball. Stetson Bennett looked really, really good.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem was that the way to beat Bama, right? No, very easy. Is to put pressure on Bryce Young, and they really sat back and let him pick them apart. And I think they're going to bring a lot more pressure. I don't know. Maybe they didn't show that look because not that they would just seed the SEC championship, because if they'd have won the SEC championship, Alabama was out, and then Georgia would have had a cakewalk to get it. Like who would have been the fourth? Notre Dame.
Notre Dame was fifth.
That would have. So like I don't think that.
Man, they just lost Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I think that Georgia went out and tried to win. Like don't get me wrong, but I always thought that Georgia played that game better than that 17-point final result was. Georgia turned the ball over 3 times. Inside the red zone, 2 on 1 interception, or no, I'm sorry, did it twice. 1 was interception, 1 was a turnover on downs. So took 2 scores off the board right there and threw a pick 6 in 3 consecutive drives, right? 3 consecutive drives where you turn the ball over inside the red zone twice. Just say those are field goals. Just say that's 6 points right there, right? And probably 1 or 2 is a touchdown, but say that's 6 points there, and then your pick 6. Well, that's a 13-point. That's 13-point swing right there in 3 drives, and that's the difference in the game, right? They end up losing by 4. It's a lot different. So I thought they played better than the final result was. I thought Alabama stepped up and made really big plays when they had to, and Georgia didn't make the big plays. I'll say this. If they lose a turnover battle again by 4, they're not going to win, right? Like Alabama's going to win. Or 3, I'm sorry. But it really was 4 if you count like 4th downs as well. But, I think that Georgia – I don't know. It's hard to bet against Saban, but I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're going to get a great game next Monday night.
Well, I think with the Cincinnati-Alabama game, it was tricky because it's one of those things where Saban knew early on that they weren't going to have to do much, right? Every other coach in the country, but I'll put it this way, if the roles were reversed, if Cincinnati had the ball up 7-3 on their own 2-yard line on 4th and goal, they're probably going to go for it, right? Saban's like, nah, I could probably get this, but let me just take the points and, just methodically win this game. It reminded me a lot of that Florida State-Alabama game in 2017, where Saban realized that we just couldn't move the ball, and he was perfectly happy not trying to score a bunch of points, just shorten the game and get out of here. And, Saban, it's funny. You saw the picture of him after the game. He couldn't care less about that game. He's like, whatever, get me to the national title. This is a joke. I don't care about he didn't even want to be at the trophy presentation after that game.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I got Georgia. Is Harlan in here in the private chat? TJ wants UGA so bad. Roll Tide. I would rather UGA win, but it's hard to bet against Saban. I'll tell you this. If both teams play up to their potential, I think Georgia's a better team. I think Georgia's the better team this year. I think that Saban's a better coach and knows how to exploit weaknesses better, and he was able to do that. I also didn't love UGA's game plan. I thought they should have gotten after Bryce Young a little bit more instead of sitting back, letting him kind of pick them apart. I think that's something that'll change in the championship game, but we'll talk about that more on next week's show. Richie, do you have any shout-outs before we get? I think that's it. NFL today, we'll watch, all the games. It's crazy how many teams are still active for the playoffs, so that's a lot of fun. I did want to talk about this. I don't want to go real deep into it. You guys can just go back and listen because I don't want these to just be a recap of the FSU spaces that we do every single day. But if you'll go to patreon.com/FSU spaces, and everything's free there. We did interviews this week with Kenyatta Watson, Ryan Bartow, Omar Graham was on. Dylan Gibbons had an incredible interview. We chatted with Dane Draper about his interview with Jared Verse, and we had Michael Alford on, FSU's AD, who obviously a friend of the show here. They were all fantastic, and we really picked up a lot of insight on Kenyatta and Ryan's recruiting process. We talked a lot with Alford about what his strategy and mission is going to be. We talked a ton. This is Friday's episode. Go to patreon.com/FSU spaces. Check out Friday's episode with Dylan Gibbons. Scroll forward 30 minutes. He was phenomenal. He talks a lot about the culture that Norvell's building. He talked a lot about his charity. He was on College Game Day yesterday. He was previewing that a little bit. We don't get anything for you going to Patreon. Again, every link is free. I'm not trying to get you to sign up. I'm not asking for your money. Go donate your money to Dylan's charity. That's what I want you to do, right? I don't need any of it for myself. But they're really, really cool interviews. And again, we don't get anything. I'm not trying to sell you something, but go check them out. Really, really cool stuff. If we had more time, I wanted to talk a little bit about Dylan's interview, but just go listen to it. Like, that's all you got to do. But I do love Dylan Gibbons. He's amazing. So go check that out. That's my shout out for today. The FSU spaces that we do. We'll be back on Monday and we'll do them again. If you are watching this and you're not on Twitter or you can't find a link, shoot me a message, shoot the podcast a message, and I'll get you a link to everything we've had going on. So do you have any shout outs before we get on here?
Yeah. Shout out to all the quarantine listeners, right? We'll all get through this together.
You sound like Newberg, bro, going on with your shout out to the quarantine listeners. Shout out to the bathroom listeners. All right, cool. Well, we will be back next Sunday, hopefully to talk about a couple more FSU commits, at least one that we really, really after hard. And we will certainly talk a ton about the national championship. Excited for that game next Monday. Sucks that college football is coming to a close, but we do have another bowl. I think there's a bowl game on Tuesday. One more bowl game, and then the national championship on next Monday, which we're excited for. We will be back. Check out doublefriesnoslaw.com as we have daily content going there, as well as a little bit of recruiting insight from Dane. And we will see you guys next Sunday. Until then, go Noles.